Moses never entered the promised land, but centuries later, he stood face to face with the promised one. You see, it may feel like God abandoned Moses after his big mistake because he isn't allowed to go into the promised land and he dies in the wilderness. You may mistakenly conclude that God's faithfulness is dependent on our own faithfulness, but you would be wrong. God is in fact good, and God's faithfulness met Moses even after death. Firstly, we see that when it came to his death, that God himself buried Moses. A hidden grave dug by God's own hands. It's a final act of tenderness and love for the man that God called a friend. Then something really disturbing happens in the book of Jude. We are told that God sends the angel Michael to contend with Satan over the body of Moses. First of all, yikes. But second of all, why would God find it so important to preserve Moses's body? Because God designed us to return to dust, right? Dust to dust, ashes to ashes. What unfinished business did God have with the body of Moses? Well, you see, it turns out even though Moses himself couldn't go into the promised land, God buried his body, preserved it, safeguarded it, with the purpose of bringing Moses, his faithful servant, back to see the promise himself, Jesus. See, before the crucifixion, Jesus is standing on a mountain in Galilee, and he is being watched by his disciples. And next to him are Elijah and Moses in body form. The disciples can see him. Not a ghost and not a spirit, but the body that God buried, the body that God preserved and safeguarded. And so Moses, the man who only saw the promised land from a distance before he died, is brought from death to see the Lord of the land. God never abandoned Moses for his mistake. God so loved Moses that he was faithful to him beyond death.